All right, strap in everyone, because today we are going deep, deep into Ranger School.
Oh yeah, Ranger School.
We're talking specifically the swamp face.
Ah, yeah, the swamp phase, the one everyone always hears those stories about.
Right. And yeah, we've got this incredible firsthand account we're diving into, and it is raw and visceral. Like, this author does not hold back on the brutal reality of what they went through.
Well, it's not supposed to be easy.
No.
It's designed to push soldiers to their absolute limit.
Like, just imagine slogging through this knee-deep water,
Yeah.
with swarms of mosquitoes everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And, even beyond the physical challenges, the author talks about how just being in that murky water, you can't see anything. It just weighs on you psychologically. It's like a sensory deprivation nightmare.
It's all part of the plan. You see, Ranger School is about so much more than just teaching these guys skills. It's about forging that unshakable resilience that they're going to need out in the field.
Yeah, talk about mental pressure.
Hmm.
There's this part where the author encounters water moccasins
Hmm.
in the swamp, but they're actually more afraid of having to take on leadership responsibility than they are the snakes. What's that about?
Well, Ranger School is a pressure cooker.
Hmm.
They are constantly evaluating you, testing you, pushing you to make decisions under extreme pressure, and then throwing you into leadership roles when you are at your absolute breaking point.
So it's not just the swamp that's the test. It's this constant pressure to lead.
Exactly. It's about forcing you to confront that self-doubt and step up,
So
even when you don't think you're ready.
there's this one scene where the author gets thrust into this leadership position, and it's dusk.
Okay.
And the ranger instructor, this like seasoned figure of authority, is spitting tobacco.
Yeah.
And the author's like desperately trying to look the part, even though they don't even chew.
It's interesting you bring that up. Projecting confidence, right? Especially when you're in a stressful situation. That is a key aspect of leadership.
Hmm.
And these ranger instructors, they know this. They use those visual cues, how you're dressed, how you carry yourself, to assess your leadership abilities.
So like the instructor with the crisp uniform, that air of command, the tobacco, it's all part of the act. It's all sending a message.
Absolutely. It's like a performance in a way. You've got to convince yourself and everyone else that you're in control.
Fake it till you make it.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes that's all you can do. And it can actually help you rise to the occasion.
And it's interesting because the author goes on to describe the swamp at night.
Hmm.
And I can't even imagine the clatter of equipment, exhausted men mumbling to each other, unseen creatures rustling around in the dark. Just reading about it is overwhelming.
Well, and that's another deliberate element of the training, the sensory overload. You're fatigued. It's dark. There's noise constantly. It all just wears you down, makes even the simplest decisions feel impossible.
Makes you realize how much we take our senses for granted.
Absolutely. And how easily they can be overloaded in extreme situations.
Right. And, they're in this intense environment, and the author keeps using the phrase tired animals to describe these soldiers. Just a powerful image.
Ranger School strips away all the comforts, all the support systems, pushes you to this primal level.
Breaks you down to your core.
Yeah, and in those moments of exhaustion, vulnerability, that's where true mental toughness is forged.
And then just to add insult to injury, daylight saving time happens right in the middle of this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Sleep deprivation, another brutal reality of Ranger School. They use it to push you beyond your limits, amplifies stress, messes with your head, makes it almost impossible to think straight. And yet they still expect you to perform.
It's amazing how much of an impact losing just 1 hour's sleep can have.
It shows you how important sleep really is.
Yeah, and the stakes are so high in Ranger School. Like, the author talks about the potential consequences of failing, both personal and professional. It's clearly not just a test. This is a defining moment in their military career.
Ranger School has a reputation. It's one of the most demanding military training programs in the world. Those who earn the Ranger tab, it means something. It means you have that elite level of leadership, combat proficiency. It's a symbol of resilience, dedication.
It's not just about passing the course.
No, it's about proving that you have what it takes to lead in the toughest circumstances imaginable.
So here we are, right? We've got our author. They're emerging from the swamp, shedding those memories, picking up the pace. Where do we go from here?
Well, it's like a baptism, like they're leaving behind the old self, the one who doubted, and they're embracing the challenge.
Emerging from that swamp, shedding those memories like a snake shedding its skin. It's a powerful image. Makes you think about, how we grow from these really tough experiences.
Oh, absolutely. Ranger School, it's designed to push you past what you think you're capable of, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, and the psychological aspect of all this, I mean, especially when it comes to leadership, it's fascinating.
Well, they don't just teach leadership in Ranger School, right? They test it, they refine it,
Yeah.
and they push it to the absolute breaking point. They're constantly evaluating you, putting you in these crazy situations, forcing you to make decisions under pressure, and then, boom, you're thrust into a leadership role when you're exhausted and overwhelmed. It's a crucible, that's for sure.
Yeah. Only the strong survive,
You got to be able to lead even when you're doubting yourself, even when you're at your weakest point.
The author talks about having to, like, become a different person. They had to chew tobacco and try to fit in with this image of what they thought a leader should be.
Mm.
Do you think Ranger School forces you to adopt a certain persona?
It's an interesting question. I mean, the Ranger School, it's steeped in tradition, right? It has this very specific culture. And yeah, maybe that environment kind of pushes you to adopt certain behaviors, certain ways of acting.
So it's not just about surviving the swamp. It's about surviving the culture, too.
It makes you think about, the relationship between identity and leadership. Like, are you truly leading if you have to suppress parts of who you are or act like someone you're not?
It's a tough question. How much of yourself do you have to sacrifice to succeed in that environment?
I don't know. It's a balance. I mean, you got to adapt, right? But at the same time, you got to be authentic, self-aware. It's a tricky thing.
And through all of this, the exhaustion, the pressure, there's this constant emphasis on teamwork. Like everyone's relying on each other to make it through.
Yeah.
The author describes the soldiers as tired animals, but even in that state, there's this camaraderie, this shared struggle.
Yeah, that's a core part of Ranger School. Actually,
Yeah.
any elite military training, it's about recognizing that you can't do it alone. You have to trust your team. You have to rely on them and support them.
It's like, what is it? The strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. Something like that.
Exactly. That shared experience, that bond, it's one of the most important things they take away from it.
So true strength, it's not just about individual grit, it's about the team. It's about that collective resilience.
Absolutely. And knowing that you're all in it together, suffering together, it's powerful, really powerful.
I think what's so interesting about this account is that it's so honest about the tough emotions, the doubt, the fear, the exhaustion.
Well, that's what makes it so relatable. It reminds us that these soldiers, they're human. They feel those things too, but they've learned how to handle them, how to use them.
Master their fear instead of letting it control them.
That's a skill that everyone can benefit from, not just soldiers.
Okay, so let's bring this back around. Most of us aren't going to be slogging through swamps anytime soon.
Yeah.
But are there things we can learn from this? Things we can apply to our own lives?
That's what we're going to talk about in this last section.
I think one of the biggest things that sticks out to me from this account is that resilience, that mental toughness.
Mm.
It's not just something you're born with, right? It's something you can actually develop.
I think that's right. I mean, this account really shows that resilience comes from facing those challenges head on.
Yeah.
Pushing yourself outside that comfort zone, learning to deal with doubt and fear, learning to operate even when you're exhausted.
It makes me think, what would I do if I was in Ranger School? What would it take for me to get through that?
Yeah.
What mental strategies would I need?
Yeah, what would you do in that moment when you're exhausted and you just want to quit? And there's no easy answer, right? It's different for everyone. Some people, they rely on their faith. Some people, it's their sense of duty. For others, it's the people around them, their team. It's about finding that thing inside you that gives you strength.
I think for me, it would be about focusing on the small wins. Like, okay, what's the next step? What's the next small thing I can accomplish? And just keep telling myself, this won't last forever.
Yeah, finding those little things to keep you going, those little anchors to hold on to when everything feels like it's falling apart.
And the author talks a lot about being afraid to fail, afraid of the consequences. But isn't there something to be said for, like, learning from your mistakes?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, failure, it sucks, right? Nobody wants to fail. But it can teach you so much. It makes you look at yourself, figure out what went wrong, and how to do better next time.
So maybe it's not about never failing. It's about, I don't know, being okay with it, seeing it as a chance to learn and grow.
Right. I think that's a good way to look at it. And that's something that can help you in any situation, not just Ranger School.
What's amazing to me is how, even though this account is specifically about Ranger School, the things we're talking about, they apply to everyone. Like leadership, resilience, mental toughness, those are things we all need.
I agree. It's not just about being a soldier. It's about being a person. And, reading these kinds of stories, they help us understand ourselves better. They help us find that strength inside ourselves.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today on this deep dive into the world of Ranger School. It's been, I don't know about you, but for me, it's been a real eye-opener.
Definitely eye-opening.
As always, we want to leave you with something to think about.
Right.
So here it is.
Mm.
What would you do to get yourself through something like that? Ranger School, I mean.
Yeah.
What would you rely on? How would you push yourself beyond your limits?
What would help you to emerge stronger on the other side?
It's a tough question, I know. But I think it's an important one to ask ourselves. Because at the end of the day, it's about finding that resilience inside all of us. So until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.